Good morning, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Filmmakers Forum. Thank you all very much for joining us today. We have with us as guest, Stanlee. Now, I will try, but I hope I won't massacre your name, Stanlee, your surname. Stanlee Ohikhuare, okay, is with us today. I met Stanlee in the flesh not too long ago, and I was quite thrilled about it because I'd been looking forward to it, and he was readily available to come for the session today, which I was quite pleased about. So let me thank him for his willingness to agree to come and talk to us today. Stanlee is a Nigerian filmmaker, director, cinematographer, and the founder of M-JOT Studios. He's also a trained fine artist, a philosophical surrealist, and a painter. He graduated from the University of Benin and the Yaba College of Technology, where he studied fine arts, specializing in painting. He is a pioneer in 3D animation technology in Nigeria and produced Nigeria's first feature-length 3D animation project titled Lifespan. He has in the past provided advertising services for big brand names like Zane, Coca-Cola, and Chicken Republic through his expertise in 3D animation technology. He later decided to venture into photography as a stepping stone to his career as a cinematographer and filmmaker. Stanlee communicates strongly with visual images and is one of the Nigerian filmmakers who have championed visual storytelling and innovative cinematography. He is known for films like Pians, The Fist of Souls, Verdict, De La Vena, Johnson Murder Conspiracy, Stupid Movie, Recourse, Iterum, Idahosa Trails, Common Man, and Lady Bucket and the Motley Monsters. He has won numerous awards for his work. These include the awards of Best Cinematographer at the Africa Magic Viewers' Choice Awards, AMVCA 2013, for Quian's Premonition, Best Sound at the Golden Icon Academy Awards in 2015 for Quian's The Fist of Souls, Best Cinematographer at AMVCA 2015 for Verdict, Best Lighting Designer at AMVCA 2016 for Common Man, and Filmmaker of Inspiration at the International Film Festival for Peace, Inspiration, and Equality 2015. Also, Mian's The Fist of Souls and Verdict won, respectively, Award of Merit Feature Film and Award of Excellence Social Justice Liberation and Protest at the Indie Fest Film Awards in the USA. Stanlee is also the convener of the Real-Time International Film Festival, RTF, which is now in its 7th year of existence. He has recently broken new ground, following years of study, by proposing a new formula for lighting blacks in film. So Stanlee, you are very welcome. There's so much for us to talk about, and let's see if we can get it all going. Now, for those who are joining us here for the first time, the Filmmakers Forum is organized by the School of Media and Communications Nollywood Studies Center of the Pan-Atlantic University. And it's meant to be a platform to facilitate engagement amongst filmmakers and between filmmakers and the audience. So please feel free to drop your comments or questions in the chat box, and we'll take them from there as time goes on. So once again, Stanlee, you are most welcome. And let me welcome very well also all our guests. Thank you very much for joining us today. But let's get the ball rolling. You have done so much, Stanlee, and it's pretty strong looking at your profile, it's pretty strong that you have an artistic inclination. I'm talking now of the fine arts. So let me ask you, why did you decide to go into filmmaking, and what has your journey been like?
Okay, first I want to thank you for the opportunity to be here to do this, because I believe every time we gather to have conversations, each person leaves more enriched and more informed than they were when they came on board. So having said that, I want to appreciate everyone who's here. And so let me jump straight to the answer to the question. So I studied fine art from Yaba College of Technology and then University of Benin, and I specialized in painting. And leaving school, I remember all I wanted to do was to own a big studio where I'm churning out paintings and having exhibitions and making good sales. And then I had my first exhibition, and because the works I exhibited with some of my classmates who were exhibited together, those works they were surrealist works. I got inspired early by people like Salvador Dali and the rest of them, heavy surrealists. I discovered Dali in the library of Yaba College of Technology when I was in my OND. And so I just realized that this guy is doing the kind of things that's just naturally occurred to me. So I decided from that point that I wanted to be a surrealist. So fast forward, after school, I had my first exhibition and every other person was selling, and then I didn't sell. uh, you know the cultural thing with Nigeria. So someone comes to your space and sees your painting, and they're like, okay, this person is possessed. And I'm not there assuring myself that, look, painting is something I know I'm going to come back to later in life to focus on full time. But for now, I need to find other means of expression where I could still remain a surrealist, but be accepted for what I'm trying out. Because for painting, as a painter, you're relying on people to buy your paintings to survive. As a filmmaker or a photographer or an animator, your imagination goes wide. And that was why the first thing that attracted me was animation, because animation is all about bringing the impossible to life. And I recall back then I used to service a lot of agencies, and that was why I met people like Filmmaker. And the day I finally decided that, you know what, I'm going to move to the live action part of things and begin to direct. I don't know if you remember, there was this commercial we did for Vicks Blue, the Baba Blue back then. And I did the animation and special effects, and he directed. And I just realized at the end of the day, because of course, most times you sign those contracts that either you can't put those works in your show reel, or you can't say that you made them because the agencies have retainership to the clients and all that. And I realized, come on, I'm an artist. What life is an artist living if you can't put his signature to his work? And of course, film was the one place where when you do something, you can boldly put your signature on it, and everybody knows you're the one responsible for trying it out. And I had a lot of imaginations in my head that I wanted to bring to life. And so straight up, after finishing Lifespan, it took over 9 years. I just jumped straight into the live action film industry.
Well, but looking at your films, it seems to me that you really have not abandoned the artistry in any way whatsoever, because it seems to me that you put a lot into the compositions. And well, you have described that yourself as experimenting with the themes of chiaroscuro and sfumato in your films. How do you approach the designs of your films in that sense? How much of it would you say how much do you bring in of your background as a fine artist?
Actually, I bring in everything. I bring in everything. I wish I had something close by. I just came back from it because nowadays I do a lot of training, and ever since I decided that I just didn't want to be the guy who's a filmmaker, who's a creative guy, but also the person who is challenging the norms intellectually. I've been going around teaching, doing a lot of training, just trying to look for young people who might buy into my ideology as a filmmaker. And so my ideology as a filmmaker answers the question you just asked. Everything I have, everything that's both innate and taught that is within me as a filmmaker, I put them out there when I make films. So as a trained fine artist, I understand colors, I understand lights, I understand composition, I understand framing. And of course, as an artist, you need to have a style. And so even though I'm a surrealist, the representation of my work has a lot of chiaroscuro in them, with something that was invented by Leonardo da Vinci. And of course, I'm inspired by Baroque art and Benin art. Baroque art because of the way the forms mingle into each other in the composition, and how the light plays an integral role in creating that contrast between the light and darkness. And of course, I believe because the way the human eye sees with rods, the cones and the rods in the eyes are the two reasons why we perceive images. So I think the cones are, they show, they perceive light, and the rods are responsible for color, which is like the RGB. And yeah, and chiaroscuro is all about determining where the strong highlight comes from. And the other places you want to submerge in darkness. So naturally what I do is that when I'm composing a scene, when I'm making a movie, I just decide that, okay, you know what, this is my character, these are the objects, and these are the spaces where I want to put my attention. And then I light them. And even if it's going to be a one-take shot where the camera is just moving without cutting, so what I do, I just do incidental lighting. So everything I would have done when I cut to reposition the lights, I have to now position them, of course, hanging above. Which is a bit more tedious but very fulfilling. But it's easy to get all these things done because I'm very big on pre-production. And so if I wanted to make a 10-minute movie, I could spend 2 months doing pre-production because, yeah, I'm not necessarily making films for commercial gain. I still intend to make big money from painting, so I can tell the story of how that bad experience went. And in the future, I'm making so. But I realized early enough, even when I was an animator, that I had to bridge that divide because as an animator back then, I was a rookie. I didn't have a name, and so I had a great product. I was going about telling people to come in and invest, and everybody just felt like there was no big deal. There was nothing about this that they wanted to be part of. But going back to an animated movie now, with whatever pedigree I've managed to get for myself, it's easier to still true. The same thing applies to the art as well. You understand? So when I make movies, I don't make any movie without my storyboard. A lot of people just end up with short list. I do my short list, but I do a very detailed storyboard. So I'll do my location recce, so I know everything that's available and obtainable, and then I do my storyboard, and then I do my lighting plot. They call it light plot in our stage, but I call it lighting plot for a thing. So that means I have a detailed document for my storyboard and my drawings, how I'm going to frame and compose my shots. I have my shot list, I have my lighting plot, you understand? And I begin to sit down and think about, okay, fine, all the colors in this movie, what the actors will be wearing per scene, because every color has an emotional impact based on the temperament of the characters, whether they're sanguine, choleric, or a mixture of choleric, sanguine, or phlegmatic, or melancholic, depending on the scene where they are, I need to be sure that what they are wearing reflects their temperament and reflects the emotions that they portray. And so there's a lot that goes into me deciding how I want to film a scene. And that's essentially because of my background as an artist. And then I can easily see shots. And I dare to say I really understand colors. I don't speak so much about myself, but I really understand colors. And of course, lights. Color is just light. Of course, color is just light. But because I understand pigments, I've taken my understanding of pigments, colors in pigments to colors in lights, because they are two different things. Because when you mix colors, light colors, when you mix colors and light, what you are doing is additive mixing. And when you mix colors as pigments, so it's subtractive, So that little understanding helps a lot. Whereas the primary colors for light will be red, green, and blue. For pigment to be red, yellow, and blue. So understanding how all these things come together, it helps you understand what's happening even behind the lights that you're using to light the characters. Like the LEDs, the light emitting diodes, just made of so many chips of different colors, but when they emit different light. So just understanding what happens behind the scene helps you to know better how to use the lights and the colors.
That sounds quite detailed. Now, let me ask you a practical question, or a question on the practical side, because you say you could spend as much as 2 months preparing a film, shooting, and so on. How do you manage with funding? That is the typical problem for everybody, because we know that the longer you spend on the project, the higher the cost. So how do you deal with that aspect of the funding for your films?
The question was about funding, right?
Right, yeah.
Well, up until now, every movie I've done so far has been self-funded. My very last movie, Tune Away, was a collaboration between myself and the guys at We Productions, the owners of Wazobia, TV, and Full FM. And so nowadays, I'm actually delving into more of co-production with people who are interested and people who I can vouch for. I've had a couple of co-productions that didn't go well. I've had a lot of collaborations that I regret. So I'm really very careful. But once I'm sure if I've done something with someone once, that means you can go back. But so far, everything I've done so far has been self-funded, but the dynamics are changing. I won't pretend that those dynamics are not changing. So am I going to continue to churn out movies the way I've always done? Yes. Maybe not as many as I should, because now I'm wearing certain other hats, like for the festival, and I'm starting a residency, a film and art residency in Benin, where there are a lot of things I'm doing now that, of course, if I could churn out like 10 movies in a year, right now I'll do most likely 5. But in terms of features, I still restrict them to like 1, maximum 2 a year. But the dynamics have changed because now there are a lot of requirements. Do I really want to go into cinemas when I release my next movie? That might be a choice that could go either way. I could either say yes or no. If I'm not interested in the extra cost that comes with P&A for movies going to the cinemas, and I'd rather just do straight to the streaming platforms and all that. So in my head right now, I'm thinking more of making films that just go straight to the platforms. I'm not so crazy about the cinemas right now, you know. But then when you start thinking about the platforms, then you have to now start taking into consideration the sentiments of the pixel peepers or the guys who make all the cameras, who must make money from their inventions with the new technologies. The guys who ensure that when you buy a camera in 2022, that camera will not be up to standard in 2023. And it's a huge system. And that's what Hollywood has done. So Hollywood has created a system where they determine the art of it and they determine every other thing of it. So Netflix comes to say, okay, if you want to make a Netflix original, you must use X, Y, Z. These are the cameras we approve and all that. That means if in your pipeline, you've been making movies all this while and it's been okay, but you want to now attract in Netflix, then that means your pipeline has to change. And that means you have to bow to the dictates of the pixel people who tell you about how many extra levels of detail or iteration or how many stop dynamic range this new camera has, of course. Yeah, but once the big platforms that you intend to put your movie on are making those requirements, then you are forced to invest along those lines. So that means it's not business as usual anymore if you begin to eye those guys. And yeah, the reality is that I personally believe that film is more about the story, and everything we perceive when we're watching a story is the information that our brain gives us. It's the brain. Everything happens in the brain. So when I'm watching a movie, I'm moved by the sound, I'm moved by the storytelling, by the performance of the actors. I'm not looking at how sharp the eye is. It's sharp enough as what I see in real life. I'm okay. I'm not looking at how sharp the eye, the way the skin interpolates. All those things are just marketing gimmicks by the guys who make the cameras and all of that. But like, yeah, the good thing is that with what I've just done with the research I've done, especially with lighting the black skin, it applies to even the white skin. And the reality is that if you've taken your time to light your character in layers, just the same way you paint and you paint in layers. I'm a painter, so I know that you paint. So if you're doing wet on wet or wet on dry, especially wet on dry, you do your first layer, you allow it to dry, then you put the next layer on top. Then it determines, it's now dependent on whether the paint you're applying on that layer is that opaque or transparent. It determines how it comes out. So if I do the lighting equivalent of the painting technique that's called wet on dry, then all those things you are telling me your camera will bring out on the human skin. Of course, my light will bring them out already. So I can shoot with a camera that was made in 2012. And I light my characters the right way, and I will achieve what your 2024 camera is promising with so much money, sometimes as much as $15,000. So again, it's in the arts, it's in the science, but I've just going to the point where I realize that we need to understand how everything goes, so we make informed choices. So yes, all the films have been self-funded from the past. I'm still making a lot of films that are self-funded, but then I have a lot in development stage now. So what I've realized that for so many years, the average Nigerian filmmaker goes from pre-production, production, post-production. Okay, then we went from pre-production, production, post-production, marketing, distribution. When the cinemas came and we understood more about that. But what has happened now is that people are going back to the basis where we go story development, pre-production, production, post-production, because you can finish your story development and have your pitch deck ready for the person who is interested in giving the green light to the project. So in the last 2 years, I've done story development for up to 9 different stories. So 9 complete stories, well developed, my mood board, storyboard, everything, waiting for someone else who's interested, either a co-producer or someone who says, okay, let's have an equity and we share in the profits or the losses that might come with the movie, or maybe with a streaming platform that might be interested in commissioning the project. So right now the workflow has changed. I'm making more of projects that I'm doing story development for, and I will only go into pre-production when I get the green light.
Fantastic. I'm very much interested in, well, this formula you have for Lighting Black, but I think we'll talk about that a little later. Let me take you up on this point you raised about the demands that streaming platforms put on you for, well, the kind of cameras and so on that you should use. Do you think that we could come up, I mean, as a body, as an industry, do you think that we could come up with alternatives to this? Yes, we are looking for platforms where we can exhibit our content and also get good remuneration. Should the industry also be thinking of ways of creating alternative platforms? Do you think that possibility exists?
Yes, the possibility exists. I think the challenge we're having as a race is that we're not looking inward. So the other day we were having this conversation on several film platforms about the new requirements for the Academy, for the Oscars and all of that. And I made one quick comment. I said, their industry, their rules, they're the ones who determine. But of course, if we look at it, there's a part of the inclusiveness that's being heralded in the world of Hollywood that is not altogether inclusive. So I think it's kind of subjective inclusiveness. And what I mean by that is that when you look at the rules and regulations in quotes of making films, you hear things like, oh, you don't put the character in the middle of the frame, don't run away from symmetry. Your composition should be asymmetrical and all of that. But come on, there was Stanley Kubrick, who was a master of symmetry, and he was usually accepted. And if we were drawing inspiration from our culture and our African identity, many of these things will mean too much to us. Because if Stanley Kubrick could do it and get away with it, not even with any strong ideology rooted on antiquity, if we came up with a school of thought that is rooted in our own antiquity as Africans, then a lot of things we should begin to experiment. I think we're going to the age where we have to be active contributors to the discussions around film. I had a conversation with Femi Olugbemi early this year. I think that was the first person I called. I was asking about the Academy, some details. And he said something that I've been resonating everywhere I go nowadays. We have gotten to the point where we no longer prove to anybody that we can make films. As in, we do not need to prove that. Everybody knows we can make films now. The question is that, are we contributing intellectually to the processes that guide the filmmaking industry worldwide? First answer is some people are, but more people need to. And why that becomes more troubling is that now we have a generation that just wants to be entertained, and they are not trying to be very, they are not trying to cautiously, engage. And part of what I'm doing now, and the reason why I've delved more into, the critical part of things and the philosophical part of things, but still not neglecting my creativity as a filmmaker. And I'll give kudos to someone like Obi Emeloye for that. He's lecturing, he's a lecturer, he's doing his PhD, he's still making films, still winning the awards. That is the prototype we need. People who are still successful filmmakers, still relevant in the physical and the live filmmaking space, but still very equally relevant in the academic part and in the policy making part too, and people who challenge the norms. And till we get there, for instance, come on, filmmaking didn't start in Hollywood. The first person who invented a camera was an Englishman. The first person who made the first motion picture of horses was a Frenchman. You understand? But how did how did Hollywood become the champion of cinema and the film industry? Because number one, they were making more investments into it. They were doing more research, and people were pumping more money into it. And of course, they treated it from an academia point of view. So when you talk about the Oscars, Academy for Motion Pictures, Arts and Science. So it's essentially an academy that tries to sell and promote and perpetuate the culture of filmmaking, while at the same time pushing their own culture as a people into their structure. So what is the culture of Africans that we can put into our structure? So I think it's high time we began to look inward and to think, you know what, we need something that represents us. You know, I have this school of thought when we talk about inclusiveness. So, you know what, okay, we have to show the LGBTQ community, we have to show blind and all that, beautiful and all that. So if all these things are of interest to the guys in the US and they are known, do people marry two wives in America? Is it against the law? Is it lawful? We are allowed to marry 2, 3, 4 wives in Nigeria, depending on where you come from. How many films in the US show men who are married to more than one wife? You know what I'm trying to say? So at the end of the day, what we are doing now is what we have to encourage the new generation to do, to begin to put forward our own ideologies, to put forward our own demands. It's more like demands. Because of course, if you want to win the Best Picture award in the Oscars now, if you do not bow to the demand of the Academy, that will never happen. And you cannot challenge them. It's their award system. It is their decision. So you bow to it or you get out. So but there are a lot of things that are genuinely African. For instance, how many people come out and say, I was inspired by, I've never seen a young filmmaker who came out, so I was inspired by Robert Ogunde. Robert Ogunde, as far as I'm concerned, is an epitome. He was not just, look, Robert Ogunde represents what I call, by the way, I'm someone who is really, really not so keen on Afrofuturism. I'll talk about that later. But Robert Ogunde represents why I choose to call the African utopia. It's like, I call it Afro-Rausism. So it's more like he's doing the art, he's doing the film, but he's infusing his own beliefs and his own culture into all these films. All these films, you could not watch Ogunde's film and be confused about what he practiced as a person or his culture or his background, you understand? But all that is watered down. And so as a painter, earlier enough, I was like, okay, I was inspired by Baroque art and a bit of Renaissance art. And I've even found a way, which is, so over the years, I've been developing a lot of thought processes and theories and all that. And there's even something I've created that seeks to merge each segment, each sequence in a movie to an art form, because those art forms have similarities with the emotions that are being portrayed in those sequences. And it's things like that. But Ogunde was very direct. He was making good films, but he was still pushing his own culture and his own tradition. So I think it's high time we came up with our own system that is uniquely us. Because if tomorrow they wake up and say, you know what, you can't show a black man, I know that's hard, but if that's the decision, then that means we'll all start making movies without black men. You understand? So it's just, at the end of the day, it's just recolonization. So yeah, to me, it's new colonialism. We're being colonized all about again. And even though I didn't want to talk about it, this is where I have to talk about Afrofuturism, because Afrofuturism seeks to propose that if futuristic Africa is the one that confronts the dictates of the Western world, and where they want to say, if you are doing your mysticism, the mysticism of Africa is not visual, it is not tangible. It is there. If I could control you, if I was a jazz man and I could control you through this medium, you wouldn't see something coming out from my eye. You would just be bending down and shaking your head there. That's what I'm trying to say. And I showed up my documentaries at IREP, and it was something my father started and I finished it. And there were rainmakers there who were making rain and stopping rain and moving rain from one village to the other. They were dictating weather. But because it's not documented, it's seen as witchcraft, it's not science. So I'm just saying we have to get to the point where we realize that we need to start documenting, start engaging more and proposing our own philosophies and our own mindset in the global space. Yeah.
You said something earlier. Let me take you up on that. Sorry, before I do that, please remember those, if you have questions, please drop them in the chat box and we'll take them from there. You said something about part of the influence for your work being also drawn from Benin, the Benin culture. Can you speak a bit more about that? Because I noticed also that you are doing quite a lot in terms of trying to grow that space, especially giving young people from that area opportunities and so on and so forth. Can you speak a bit about that?
Okay, so the Benin of antiquity was one where culture was really rich. Just as you have hieroglyphics in Egypt, and of course there's a demotic, which is like the pidgin English of hieroglyphics in Egypt. What we had as our own communication and documented history were the bronzes. So when people say Benin bronze art, they were not bronze art. They are bronze documents. They are bronze history. So I have a friend M-JOT Studios. He belongs to the Benin Dialogue Group as well. And he's been doing a lot of work on trying to decode how those things were arranged before they were pulled away from the world. So now if you understand the Benin culture and the Benin history, there was a time of the Ogisos. The Ogisos, according to those who know the Benin history and the old men who I spoke to and did some work with, those were like, you could call them like aliens, people from outwardly people who came and were ruling the Benin, and some things happened. And the story goes that one day when one of them decided to just cool off in the evening, and they removed his human form, and the hunter thought it was an animal and shot it. And then they rebelled against the people, and there was this onslaught, and that's how they left. And then there was a huge gap before the Oba dynasty began. Now, from the time of the Oba dynasty, the first Oba of Benin, till 1897, when the bronzes were stolen, everything that happened in the Benin kingdom was arranged chronologically with those bronzes. And bronze casting was an art that was only commissioned by the Oba of Benin. So, there's an important event in history that needs to be documented. They call the Guild of Bronze Casters, and they make the bronze that depicts that event. You understand what I'm trying to say? Now, let me go away from the history. Let me go to the art of it. Look at the way the bronzes are always done. You do not appreciate, you will never appreciate a Benin bronze work in absolutely right spaces. Just think about it. Even when they keep them in the museums, they are emulating Baroque art. You understand? They're emulating chiaroscuro there, because what they do is that they put them in the space and they use spotlights to highlight certain areas, and so it makes them, because they are relief projects, you understand? So they have flat relief, so they come out. So it's that illumination of certain parts and submerging the other parts in darkness allows it to feel like those things are jumping out from the wall. You understand what I'm trying to say? So I could easily say, I'm only inspired by Baroque art because everything I just described now is what you see in Baroque art and chiaroscuro and all of that. But of course, it's the same thing that is happening with Benin art. And so when they were in the palace, they were there, but now everywhere Benin art is exhibited, they're exhibited in a way that is reminiscent of chiaroscuro and Baroque. You get what I'm trying to say? So I will not stop at saying I'm just inspired by Baroque art. I will also say I'm inspired by Benin art. And the residency we're about to start in Benin, it's actually it's all about that, because usually a residency means you go to a place, you spend some time, know the place, go around, look the culture, you now create works that represent your experience so far. So now what we are doing with this residency, we take you around all the important places, the Oba's Palace, Egun Street, the moats and everything, then come back. So we already have a proposition of how you can do this, but then you are free to do what you want to do. But then there's a proposition and a template that will say, okay, if you don't mind, do this. And we will do everything we can to promote that, because it's high time we began to have film movements, like art movements and styles. So film is film, it's generic. Everybody makes films the same way. Like I said, there's nothing you want to make to prove that we can make films nowadays. But I long to see a day where we begin to come up with new styles and new unique movements that capture film in a different format that is different from what's happening in Hollywood. And then Hollywood, we now need to prove that it is truly inclusive by appreciating these new thoughts and theories and expressions that are not conforming to the traditional Hollywood style of making film. One of such things would be taking advantage of the visual beauty of symmetry. If you look at those Benin artworks, the Oba is in the middle. Someone's holding his right hand, someone's holding his left hand. Then you see a horse here, you see a horse here. You see a mermaid here, you see a mermaid there. You see fish on the ground on the right, you see on the left. You understand? So such things. And honestly, we really need to get to a point where we are very academic about the things we do. I'm making a couple of documentaries right now again about Benin Kingdom and the history, because most of the men I used to work with, even when I was in school doing illustration for their books, most of them are passing on. Many of them have died. And if they die and their knowledge is left inside the book, most Nigerians won't read them. You understand? And then we have to build on that and propagate and promote. We need, I'm putting a challenge to every filmmaker. We need to begin to come up with new film styles, the way you have art styles. So if you look at the work of Pablo Picasso and look at the work of Rembrandt, there are two different styles. Who says we can't have the same thing replicated in film? So you have romanticism, you have expressionism, you have impressionism, you have Veneza art, you have realism, you have high realism, you have Dadaism, you have surrealism. Film is just film, one flat way of making film. I think that's the change. And if there's any people who can make that happen, it has to be us, because Africa has a very rich culture and we are mostly on top. And so far, we're playing catch up and conforming to everything we've been fed with. I think it's now time for us to take the knowledge outside, and which is why I came up with, we're traveling around to go and teach this topic about how to light the black race. Because in the whole of Hollywood and other film schools, Hollywood was developed with the white man in mind. So all the lighting, 3-point lighting, everything is just for the white skin because the pigmentation is different. Lighting happens when light reflects off objects. So the one that's absorbed doesn't matter to anybody, it's the one that's reflected. And so when you bounce a light and use it as a bouncer, a diffuser, it looks very beautiful on the white skin because it's already pale. But the black man is different. You can see the shadows on this side of my face as it is. If I wear white, there's something called indirect illumination that will happen because of something that's close to me to be sufficient to light me up. You understand what I'm trying to say? So there has to be a formula for lighting the black man. And since they've not developed it, if I've cracked it, then let me take it to them so I can teach them something. Let's begin to be the ones teaching.
Before I take you up on this formula, what you have said that we need to come up with our own way of shooting films and new theories and so on. But don't you think that there is a problem right now that we have, which is that many of us who jump into, sorry, I use the word jump, who go into filmmaking, many times we do not also at the same time situate ourselves with what has gone before. For instance, you can speak. I mean, it's very enlightening to hear you talk because you make references to the past, what has gone on in the past, the history, the experts, because you have studied all of this. But many times, many of those who are going into filmmaking do not focus on you could say the education, the background. Now, don't you think that that is a problem that we will also, first of all, have to deal with? That in order to build, we should also ground ourselves in all of these theories, all of these things that people have done, so that we then know, yes, these are now the differences that we have to bring on board.
Yeah, you're actually absolutely right about that. Because essentially, one thing that's happened is that I meet a lot of young filmmakers, okay, because of the festival that I organize. So I meet a lot of young filmmakers who say, oh, I'm inspired by this person. And they mention Francis Ford Coppola, and they mention all those big American names. And I'm like, are you trying to tell me there is no Nigerian who has inspired you? You understand? So it's a shared problem. And when I say shared problem, is because number one, part of the problem lies in the fact that the filmmakers who are making the films are just, most of us make films, we don't document ourselves. Many filmmakers don't even have websites. The best you can see of them is social media. Many filmmakers in Nigeria they are not on IMDb. And the few who are on IMDb free. You get what I'm trying to say? And these are platforms because, yeah, if a young man can wake up in Nigeria and is interested in film and he begins to study an American, why is he studying him? Most of these guys have not attended film school. A lot of young filmmakers out there today got their training from festivals, special trainings organized by people and all that. So it's not necessarily film school, not New York Film School, where they were forced into making these people their idols. But they went online and they did research and all of that. And there are a lot of things. So we have to be out there projecting our thoughts, projecting our history, projecting our works. And we must have a space where people can just come and experience us. You understand? And so again, it's like this forum is very important. I think apart from, if there's one thing we've gotten that we're doing right, is the festivals. We're doing festivals right, good attendance from the big ones, and people come and there are sessions and everything. But festivals happen once every year. Each festival happens once in a year. I think we should have very periodic gatherings that are semi-informal, where people can just sit down and relate in an environment where there's equity and everybody just feels relaxed around each other. And then you can get the older generation to mingle with the new generation. And then people can begin to pick mentors for themselves. You understand? Personally, I will tell you this very easily. I was doing my industrial training in Yabate in 1996 when Stanlee Ohikhuare released Hostages. And I was still just a painter. I was not even thinking about being a filmmaker. But till date, the impression that Hostages made on me as a young Nigerian is still fresh. It's still fresh. I don't know. I've seen a lot of movies, but there's just something about what Hostages did for me. So even though I don't call Stanlee Ohikhuare every day, he doesn't have my number on his phone and all that, I follow him, I follow his works, and he's a source of inspiration to me. And he's more a source of inspiration to me because till date, he's still churning out good works. You get what I'm trying to say? So, I'm wondering, like, okay, but yeah, in all fairness, like, I know there was time I was trying to hook up with Ola Balogun, for instance, and I called him, invited him to your festival, tried to hook up with him one-on-one and all that. And yeah, apologies, but he was very elusive about, okay, getting close to someone. I don't know what the problem is. So I had to tell you, sir, you know what, I think I'll just let you go. I really wanted to be close to you. I really wanted to appreciate you for what you've done, but I respect it if you want your privacy, you know. And for me, that was a minus. I'm not saying it because I think I'm important, but yes, personally, I personally have been a mentor to hundreds of young filmmakers, and anybody who I hold in high regard, I push them to those people too. You understand? And those people are more important than me. I'm just a small kid in the block, you know. So from the days of making commercials where I met Femi Odubemi, I've never worked with him on the set before. We don't sit down to talk one-on-one, but I just know that I look at Femi Odubemi and I'm like, oh, he inspires me. And I'm watching him. And then I call him and say, bros, you inspire me, you see the things I'm looking up to you for, see the things I'm following you for. So I believe that by doing that, I'm also putting him in check. And he knows that, okay, all these things I'm doing, someone is watching me. Because I have to make it that way, you understand? And people like German and Nicola and Theolosin, there are some people I just, you know, I'm watching them from a distance. I'm aspiring to do the great things they are doing and to match and to mirror some things they do. And then I call them and I tell them, I did watch you. Just know that I'm watching from afar and everything you do, I'm watching, and I needed to remain a source of inspiration to me. You get what I'm trying to say? And I think there's one thing. There's the mentorship system is something that can never be old. It can never be old. And we need more of that in Nigeria. We need all those forums where very young people can meet very old, moderately old, and not so old people, so that you can have this space where everybody can just relate and know more about each other.
Fantastic, thank you. Now I have a question here from Oloranti Babatunde with reference to the Real-Time Film Festival. He says, kindly tell us about the Real-Time Film Festival, challenges and prospects.
Okay, so the Real-Time Film Festival for me, like I always tell people, I say, it's the festival that saw the future. Because even the name, the Real-Time Film Festival, was better because we wanted to have a festival where, irrespective of where you are, you could be part of it in real time. And so as far back as 2016, even before the pandemic and before Zoom, even our first edition, people who could not attend, they attended via Skype. So we did our Q&A sessions on Skype. You know, people who were on sets while the festival was going on, they took us behind the scene on their sets and they were seeing us, we were seeing them. It was harder to do the connection there. You know, it's not Zoom that's so easy now, like what we are doing. But we made it happen. And the focus was to create a festival where everybody feels equal. Where everybody feels equal. And we say it's a festival for filmmakers by filmmakers. So everybody who's part of running the festival is a filmmaker. And so why the Real-Time Film Festival? Like I said, we needed to create a space where everybody feels equal, a space where there's equity. Because I attend a lot of festivals and I can be in any setting, in any gathering, I can join any conversation during any festival I attend. You get what I'm trying to say? But then I'm there talking to someone and I look sideways and I see a young guy who's just there. You can see in his eye that there's somebody he wants to talk to, but he feels like they're not bombing well to I can't go that place. And, you know, and most times I just go and playfully. If you know me, when I'm in public, I'm always very playful. The only time I'm not playful is when I'm working. I'm like a demon. So I'll just go drag the person and go. I'm like, okay, why don't we create a space where it doesn't matter who you are, whether you're a first-time filmmaker or you're an established filmmaker. Once you find yourself at this festival, you have no choice but to come down to everybody's level. So everybody now marries, everybody just merges up and there's equity. And that's what we've managed to do. And I know in 2019, when we invited a lot of people like Motola, Kunle was there, people like Kintola, we had a lot of people. And one of the first things we tell people when we invite them is, this is how we are in this festival. As we are coming, everybody is on a normal level. So just come with that. We are not, we don't mean to be rude, but we're just saying when you come, this is how the whole atmosphere is and all that. And if you attend, it's one thing. Everybody, from the first year we had it till now, every time I look at the videos and when people are talking, one thing that just keeps coming is people say, this is one festival where everybody feels like a family. You understand? So what are the challenges? Yes, self-funded. I personally have run away from involving government or anything at all at the festival because we want to keep it truly independent so that our thoughts and our passions and our sentiments are first there. Nobody can dilute it. Secondly, because, and I'll say it without any fear or anything, because government guys always make you start your event late. And then we're a festival that is very strict with time. We say we don't do African time. So I know our first edition, when we had our opening ceremony, we said red carpet will start by 7:30 and end by 9:30. And then guys showed up by 9:45. And we had even cleared the red carpet. We removed all the cameras. After that, the festival, not the whole again. And we were like, oh, we finished red carpet. You are watching films now. So we started from the onset to embed it in people's minds that we do not do African time. And why was it crucial for us to do that? So we're having a festival where we wanted people to join us from all over the world. And that means we have to take the time zones and all the GMT and all the different time zones, and we have to marry them with our own. So when we tell someone where you will come up for your Q&A session by 9 p.m. your time, 5 p.m. Nigerian time, we expect that the person is waiting. So if we've taken one extra hour, that means, and for us, the reputation is very important, what people feel. So if you go on Film Freeway, where we collect our submissions, we have a 5-star rating because, of course, we don't joke with those things. And the experience has to be good, the organization has to be good, but it's all self-funded. And there are years where, okay, we want to do something and, okay, money don't finish. And I'll just talk to the guys in team, a guy who has 50K, who has 100K. And okay, let's wait there. Don't worry. Maybe in 2 months' time, when I'll give you guys back. Somehow, it's just a family. You know? So the challenges are that, number one, we are not funded, we are self-funded. And when I say self-funded, even if I get money from someone else, somewhere along the line during the process, I have to pay back. So I could say it's Stanlee funded. You know, so those are the challenges. But what are the things that keep us going? From 2016 till now, I know from our database, there are over 70 filmmakers who have shown up right from the first edition as just festival goers and enthusiasts. Some of them just came to watch movies, others came to attend the training sessions. And these guys are beginning to pull their weight in the industry. 2 years ago, when we had the virtual edition, when every other person shut down, the reason why we're only able to do our festival that year was because we were already doing virtual. You know, it was easy. We already had the workflow. We were doing this thing since 2016, so it's not a big deal. And so we had it. So there's a guy called Ozo Uche. He had come in 2017 just as a participant. He came in 2018 and attended some trainings. I know he was there in my lighting design class and some directing classes. I think he was in the screenwriting class by by Mr. Oshin. So all those things went on. Then he came in 2020 and he made a movie called Onje Ale. And what we've done as a festival is that we try to enact partnerships with a lot of people. So we have a standing partnership with the Institute d'Afrique in France. And so every year we have an agreement with them. We take films, first-time filmmakers. We are very specific. So they wanted Nigerian films from our festival, but we had to be specific. We say we'll give you films, but it has to be first-time filmmakers who have done exceptional work because they're the ones who need the push the most. So we took his film to France alongside some other films, and we showed them there to keen audience, and you know the feedback was great. And we came back, and we have this open door policy where we can talk to everybody. We talk to you about your project, what are you working on, how can we come in, and all that. And so we even formed the collective where it's like an all for one, one for all thing. So anything that belongs to one belongs to all, and that's how we've been operating for those who are members of the collective. And so fast forward. Just recently, that same film was nominated in the short film category of the year in the same. So imagine, so with that guy's history, we can track it. You understand, from just coming to the festival, attending stuff, making his film, winning at the award, taking his film outside. And just last week, we had some new conversations with some guys from the UK delegates that were in town last week. And yeah, we're pushing it to the UK as well. So that means this year, apart from France, Trinidad and Tobago, and the Bahamas, where we currently have partnerships, we're at the UK. And every time we go on these sessions, we are taking films made by first-time filmmakers. So that's what keeps us going. So the money might be hard to come by. It's stressful. Like this year, we're going to Benin. I've never had the festival in Benin. It's my place, but it's not a terrain that I've done a festival in. All the 7 years, 6 years in Lagos. So Benin is going to be tough. But one thing that I can assure everybody is that RTF has been impactful, not because we had all the money, but because we are never short of ideas. So because going to a new place presents new ideas and new things we could do that are exciting, and everybody knows RTF is always exciting. What I can assure everybody is that RTF this year is going to be a blast, and I can assure you of that.
Fantastic, well done. Now, before I have a question from Tunde Onikoyi. I would like to focus a little on this formula that you said you have come up with. A lot of talk has come up these days about the need to decolonize African film, so on and so forth. And it strikes me that what you have done now to come up with a formula for lighting blacks in films is rather in that line, you know, making things which are now specific and peculiar. Can you talk to us about what exactly it is you have done, what led you to it, and so on?
Okay, so 4 years ago, first of all, I always play with lights. That's what I do in my spare time. I don't really have a social life like that. So most people only see me outside during festivals. So you have IREP, I'm there, Afrif, I'm there, Echo, I'm there, In Short, I'm there. Every film event, especially festivals, you will see me there. But what do I do in between? So that I'm doing story development for a project, or I'm doing pre-production for another one, or post-production for another one. I'm always, at every point in time, there are at least 15 to 20 projects at different stages of development. So I can have 10 movies in pre-production or 10 movies in story development stage, and I'm working on the story. But if I'm not doing that, what else am I doing? I'm playing with my lights and my cameras, apart from drawing and painting. I won't talk about the painting one because my paintings, I have plans for them, so I'm not putting them in public domain right now. So, but I'm playing with lights. And what do I mean by that? I always challenge, like I know 2 years ago when the guys from Sony came to Nigeria, to Lagos for the first time, they came with the camera, the was it the FX9? Came with the FX9. And then we met at Sheraton and they wanted me to demonstrate the camera, you know. So I'd never used it before, but I'm big on Sony cameras. I have like 10 Sony cameras behind me here. So of course, I think they are checked. And so they brought the camera and I turned it on and straight up I went into the menu and everything. I was checking them out and all that. And so they began to tell me about all the qualities of the camera, how it can do this, how it can do that, how it can do this and that and that. And I told the head of the delegation, I said, you know, these are nice things to sell the camera, but you know, there are ways around these things. And the guy looked at me and he laughed. That laughter was annoying. He knew at once that he was talking to someone who knew that all these things were just selling points, not as if they were do or die, as if you couldn't survive without that. Look, the reality is that, let me even start talking about this. I'll use this opportunity to talk about this light in the black race. So what's the special thing about the black race? It's just the pigmentation, it's the melanin. And how do people get lit? Whereas in painting, you're using pigments to mix subtractively. In lighting, you're using rays of light, ultraviolet, that is from the ultraviolet spectrum to the infrared spectrum, which is the spectrum where you have visible light. That's what you're using to try and change the outlook of the person that the light is reflecting off. Because the light does not stay on you, the light reflects off. There's no light on you. The light that could be on me right now is absorbed light, and so you are not seeing it. And so, talking from the absorbed light perspective, there's something called black body radiation. So black body radiation is like static energy. It's more like every time you see someone, like I'm here, and if I turn off all the lights here, there's an amount of energy I'm exuding. And that's the science of it. Now, how you know the effect of black body radiation? If you take like a hot metal and you put it in the fire, the part that's closest to the fire begins to reflect the amount of heat that the fire has and begins to turn red, and it goes progressively if you leave it longer. But the human body is always emitting heat. And when I sit down and you look at me in the dark room, you might not see anything, but when you put on your infrared goggles, you begin to see the heat I'm emitting. So what I've done is that I've taken the science of it, and because film is art, I've taken the science of it and I'm trying to marry the science with the art. So now that energy that is not perceptible without the glasses, how do we now emulate, how do we simulate it? You understand? I can't give too much detail here, but of course, we have an upcoming session where I'll be not just be talking about it, but practicalizing it. And you know about it, and we'll announce it before this session is done. And I'm really excited that that's happening, because on the 5th of May, I'm going to teach this in the University of in the film school in Birmingham. In fact, 5 different campuses. And so I'm really excited I'll get to share it with people at home before I take it out there. So it's a very simple process, a 3-step process. So the first thing is that you have to simulate the body heat. And it's just all in connection to the way the human brain works. So the human brain knows that, okay, there's a person here. And the way the science knows it, the eye also knows, because the eye is sending information to the brain and the brain is processing. And then there's a person here. So the first thing is to throw the person in a corresponding hue of that thermal radiation that you have, which is usually deep red. You understand? Of course, deep red, it has to be a tint so that the person doesn't look reddish. And then when you have that, first of all, and then you throw another wash on it, which has to be like a neutralized color. So it's more like you're putting a plate onto the person. So that plate gives you a base on top of which you are going to put your light. And when I practicalize this, it's going to be very clear, because it's something that it's a formula that you always try, you always work. It's not like trial and error. It's like 1 + 1 will always be 2. And so when you have that, and so everybody who has managed to almost talk about this in the past, where they've gotten it wrong is that they keep saying, oh, you know what, you apply some makeup on the person's skin. I'm not talking about lighting the black rays with makeup. It's the lighting, it's just the black rays and light Forget about the makeup. So everywhere I've seen in film schools where they are talking about lighting black people, they say, okay, you now apply this makeup and the makeup will now serve as a layer for the light to reflect off. You get what I'm trying to say? But they are not even saying it as reflecting off. They say it more like, oh, so that the light can be absorbed. We're not trying to absorb the light. We are trying to reflect it, but not in a shiny way. And so if you just hit it straight up without doing so, so I hope I'm not going too technical here. But bottom line is that you need to have a base layer of color that will simulate a pigment. So what the other guys are thinking about as makeup on the skin, you have to put it there as light. You understand? Like I said, lighting is additive mixing. So RGB gives you white, but you put RGB pigment, it gives you black. Yeah. So the question is that how do you use light to simulate pigment on human skin? So RGB gives you white, but when you start bringing filters, red, green, blue filters, and plasting it onto the skin, what filters do is that they kill every color that is absent from them, they absorb it, and then they reflect and allow the ones that they have the inherent nature to penetrate through them to hit the person's skin. So the question is, when you put your RGB filter together and you place it on top of your light that you want to use to put a wash on your character, what you've done is that the makeup they would have been trying to do with makeup paint and all of that, you've simulated it. So what you have is that it gives the character a bronze look. Let's go back to the Benin bronzes now. So it gives you that bronze look that now serves as a base plate for you to begin to light your characters and put those colors. But the goal for lighting like the black skin is that, look, less is more. It's one thing I've realized. The best form of lighting for the black man is what you have in your ambience. You know, there's something called ambient occlusion, and that's a term from animation too. But if you understand how ambient occlusion works, is similar to what I'm proposing now. You get what I'm trying to say? Because what you do is that it's going to make your highlights, richer and your shadows richer with details. So let me go back to the camera makers now, the lens makers that say, oh, this lens or this camera will bring out more skin tone and more detail. I can put the detail and the more skin tone with my light. So why are you selling camera to me? Straight up. You understand? If I put a base layer on any character, even if this part of my skin was meant to be in a shadow, there's a way I can light this part of my skin, and then I have some light in my shadow. And because light works in contrast, like when you look at the contrast, you have to look at complementary colors. Once I have my umbers in front of my face, the natural contrast to my umbers will be the blue greenish. You get what I'm trying? The blue and green is behind. So that means if I plot my blue and green within my shadow, and I enhance my umbers with a complement of the blue and green, which is going to my red now, which is the first wash I said you're going to put on the character. You see how it works. So at the end of the day, if you understand the color wheel and everything, it's still working. But the deal is when you are lighting a scene, here's where it gets tricky. When you're lighting a scene now, you have 10 white men and 2 black men. How do you light the scene? So that's where processes now start coming in. Who do you light first? In that case, you light the black man last. Because you light the white man, give him his normal Hollywood lighting, then you begin to use shapers to light your black man. Because the first thing you naturally need to do is perhaps, to use flags to cut down on the amount of light in your black character. And then you begin to work his own lighting independently. That means there has to be someone on, if Hollywood really wants to go academic about this whole thing, lighting and all that, then there has to be someone on the film set who's a specialist in lighting the black man. So they don't light black men accidentally. So I've seen a lot of movies where the lighting were good. I've seen a lot of Nigerian movies. Of course, we're Nigerians. And in Nigeria, what we do is intuitive lighting. Because we've seen black men enough. We know how we be. You understand? So we don't kill ourselves too much. But the white man doesn't see black men in close spaces too often. So they tend to light the black man as if they are doing their normal 3-point lighting for a white man. You understand what I'm trying to say? So it's easy for us. So when you're shooting outside, for instance, of course, you shoot during the golden hours when the clouds are covering the heat of the sun. except maybe you are telling an action movie where there's a lot of tension and you need that harsh contrast and shadows. But if you are shooting just normal naturalistic lighting, if you are a naturalistic scene, then essentially what you are doing is you are putting a wash, you are putting a first coating to simulate the thermal heat coming from the body, then you put a wash, and then you put your light on top of it. And then those lights, we have to be very careful, because nowadays, when we look at energy consumption, we all run towards the LED lights and all of that, even though they have a way of changing the color temperature on their bodies nowadays from maybe the 2K to 64K and all that. The LED light, from my research, is still not the best thing to light a character. It's still a good, in fact, it's still a good old tungsten light. It consumes more power and all of that. But here's the format: tungsten lights, full blast, passing through a diffuser on a black character that already has those first two layers I've talked about. And then wherever you want to do that's your key light, whatever you want to do with your fill light, as long as that fill light now complements it and has a complement of your umber, brushing it a bit. And you see, the funny thing is that many times, if you do this, people will not even be able to tell that, oh, there's a complementary color there, because you are not overemphasizing it. Because if there isn't an object that is forcing indirect illumination on the character, then you shouldn't actually see the color. Yes, and there has to be a reason for every source of light hitting your character. You know, for instance, if I wanted to put red on my face now, and this was a movie, and I thought it'd be nice to have red here because the story I'm telling, I want to begin to introduce danger, what would I do? Most likely, I will cut to a shot of my monitor or my screen, and I will show that I'm watching something, and the end frame of that thing is red. So now when I cut back to me, you know there's a reason why there's red on my face. You get what I'm trying to say? And that could be used in my storytelling. And there's no red from the beginning, but the moment I want to introduce the danger, I cut to my screen to show that red. And then you know there's a reason why the red is bleeding onto my face. You understand what I'm trying to say? But if that's not what I'm trying to do, and I'm just trying to use complements like I'm talking about now based on the research I've done, then you put those colors there, but there's so much of a tint that it almost isn't there, because your eye will tell you it's not there, but it's there. Because your brain is what's, like I said at the beginning, when you're watching a movie, it's your brain that's doing all the work, that's processing all the information and accepting what's being proposed. So your brain knows it's there and knows that it's ideal, but it's not so much that it's so visible to everybody. Oh, there's blue light here. You get what I'm trying to say? So again, it's a lot of, like I said, this is something that's better on a practical platform. I'm sure a lot of people feel like I'm just talking jaga now with all the science.
Not at all.
I'm trying not to go too much into the scientific part, but if we have to go through the scientific part, there's actually a lot. There's a lot to consider, and so when you understand that, when you look at the works of people like Newton and Planck, where they propose how lights are formed, you know, you start looking at those theories that say when different beams of light, you know, because light is just the visible aspect of the electromagnetic spectrum. You understand? So you have the gamma aspect, you have all those things, but light is the visible part of. So when the light is going to this side towards the reds, that means it's going infrared, which is less red. You understand? If it's going to the extreme part, it goes ultraviolet, which is dangerous. And that's why many times when you go under the sun, you have sunburn, because the infrared rays from the sun, the ones that manage to permeate the clouds, are hitting your skin and all that. It makes it dangerous to your skin. So again, like I said before, when I said I was talking about my background as an artist, understanding what happens behind the scene helps you know how to use things in any given field, you understand? So understanding what happens with light when they travel through the spectrum, understanding what happens with light when they mix as opposed to colors when they mix, understanding the impact of complementary colors against each other, both on the foreground and the background, or maybe parallel. Understanding all those things helps you to make better lighting choices on the film set. And of course, a film is not complete if the lighting design is not strong. I tell people, for me, the smallest part of filmmaking is the dialogue. I'm not saying dialogue is not good. I'm just saying dialogue is beautiful, but You can watch a movie from beginning to the end and there's no dialogue. How do you perceive and appreciate the movie? Because the camera is telling part of the story. The lighting is telling part of the story. If I showed myself here and there was a woman behind me and I had blue light flooding my face and red light hitting her face, and we've established that we have a conflict and we're in a relationship, already the lights hitting our faces or the lights bleeding on us already begin to tell who might be the hostile partner between the two of us. I'm just saying at the end of the day, then beyond the lighting and the light that's hitting in terms of light on the spectrum, the color, you understand, the light that's being reflected of what we're wearing, which is AKA the color. Because when I'm wearing a black shirt, okay, let me say I'm wearing a green shirt now. You see green because green is what that shirt is reflecting. That means that shirt is absorbing red, yellow, blue, and every other thing. It's just reflecting green. Of course, like I said, there could be things giving indirect illumination to the green. And then because of that, you can see a bit of them, but it's predominantly green because every other color is subdued and absorbed, but green is being reflected. You understand? So again, it tells you that even what the person is wearing in the scene is very important to the storytelling. If a character who's phlegmatic, and most likely I'll douse the person in bluish greens, and I bring a character who is sanguine, like me, I'm choleric sanguine, that's my temperament. And I bring a character who's like sanguine, but it doesn't reflect in my outfit. Okay, the choleric part reflects in what I like to wear, black. So, so I'm just saying, if I bring a character whose color is predominantly red, and I bring another character whose color is predominantly blue, if this was a movie, when they meet, I will play with the purples because I'm insinuating that the red and the blue are now coming together in harmony. So again, color for me is, I don't expect everybody to appreciate what I'm saying. I might be saying gibberish to a lot of people. It's just that because of my background as a fine artist, I've managed to find a way to feel like I'm always painting every time I'm making a film. So my goal when I make movies is that every frame, if you're watching any movie I've made and you close your eye and you pause the movie, every frame you look at should look like a well-crafted painting. That's my goal when I make movies.
Fantastic. That sounds lovely. And I can assure you, it didn't sound like gibberish at all. It was really fast. Great stuff. Okay. And well, in reference to what Stanley said, yes, he has graciously agreed to give us a session really to explain this in the practical sense. And we will make known the details subsequently, the dates and all of that when this will happen for those who will be interested. And I'm sure many people are interested. So we will announce the date for the practical session where Stanley will explain to us and show us the details of this formula. Great job, Stanley. Great job. Now, I have a question here from Tunde Ohikhuare, who says, interesting conversation, Stanley. I want you to shed light on how you choose your stories or construct them. If you do not mind, a theme like coat of arms comes to mind. Secondly, could you explain how aesthetics steeped in Benin antiquity cosmology has influenced your work? It's a bit of what you've been saying already. That's the question of today.
Okay, thanks, Tunde, for the question. So the first question is about coming up with a story. For me, I come up with stories by, first of all, I always have a jotter where I archive all my experiences. Then I have a folder in my phone where I either speak into the phone any experience I've had or write it down, depending on whether I have time or not. So there was a day I was driving and I was in front of the rail line and the train was approaching, and I was just imagining, what if I was in the middle of the rail and the train was coming and I wanted to move? And then I looked at my shoe and the lace was just down. I was like, okay, what if the lace was already tangled to the throttle and I couldn't do anything? And that means I'll get crossed here, So the moment things like that occurred to me, and again, my imagination is too, it's too vivid, but it works for me as a filmmaker. So I have that as one. Then the second thing is that when I now sit down to say, let me structure it, let me create my plot outline and all that, what I do is I just ask questions. So I'll give a quick example. In 2 minutes. Sorry, give me any subject matter. So let me tell you how I come up with my stories. Any subject matter.
Well, one that's prevalent these days, elections.
Elections. Okay, elections. What do I want to tell about the elections? What will be the most important thing? What do people most likely want to say about the election? Everybody knows about the violence and all that. We are not so used to seeing genuine elections. So I've asked 5 questions, and then I will choose a genuine politician. You get what I'm trying to say? So I'm asking questions and informing of the stories. What will it be about this genuine politician? What will happen to him that will be the conflict in my movie, the inciting incident? And I'll be like, okay, everybody expects that, oh, he'll go through the election and all that. What if he's shot while he's campaigning, but yet he's still in the race and the party does not provide another candidate, and then they expect people to vote for him even while he's in a coma? You see what I'm trying to say? So that's okay. How will people vote for him if he's in a coma? Okay, but wait, will he die at the end of me, or will he survive? Because for me, it's very important that I resolve the end of the story from the beginning. Because I think the end of a movie for me is more important than the beginning. So how does it end? So I'll be like, okay, at the end of the day, will he survive? Will he die? So 2 questions now. What will I go for? See, I've always, all the time I've gone ahead with the plot of this story, it's just been with questions. So for me, anybody who knows me knows that I will opt for him die. You understand? Yeah, because what will that do to the viewers? So now that will put a lot of questions. Okay, now he's dead. The vote was for him. Who will now take over this? So I'm asking these questions, and as I'm asking the questions, I'm fleshing them out. Because here's what happens when people watch movies. When a situation plays out, whether you know it or not, whether consciously or unconsciously, you're asking yourself a question with every situation that is happening on screen, as with the mise en scene. And then every time that a question you ask is not answered, you're frustrated. So you either choose the only question that you will not answer, that you know the people are asking, is the question that you need to answer in your third act, where you are showing them your twist in the movie. So for me, I only leave one question unanswered to the end. But as I'm making the movie, every question that is asked in scene 1, as much as possible, I answer it in scene 2. So they're like, oh, you know that? I'm like, okay, that's why. Then continues. They ask a new question, I make sure I answer it next. They ask a new question, but the ones that are pivotal to the story, that I want to use to give some kind of dynamism to my story. You know, when they talk about dynamic range in cameras, I believe stories should also have dynamic range. So I don't keep it too happy for too long. I make you scared, I make you happy, I make you afraid, I make you sad, I make you angry, they come back to happiness immediately. You know, so the ones that will not work with the emotional dynamism I'm trying to create, I might push them further so that I suspend you a bit more. But for the pertinent ones that need to get the story moving forward, sharp, so that people feel like they are being entertained, they are being carried along, and all their questions are being asked as much as possible, I keep answering the ones from each previous scene in the next scene. So that's basically what I do. And then when I'm done, I put the story down, I abandon the screenplay as if I didn't write it. And I come back maybe in 2 weeks or a month or 2 months, depending on how much time I have. And then I look at it again. And that's how I keep modifying till one day, maybe after 2 months, I look at it and there's nothing else to change. And once I get to that stage, I start doing my storyboard. And of course, before I do the storyboard, I would have gotten my locations. And so I'm doing my storyboard knowing that, oh, there's a door here, there's a window here, there's a table here. So my storyboards are precise. Essentially, my workflow is such that I do not go on the film set and begin to try and solve problems. I solve all the problems in pre-production. Then I come to set to just execute and have fun. Because anything you miss in pre-production, haunts you in production. Anything you miss in production, haunts you in post-production. God help you if you needed to come back to shoot a battle scene with 1,000 fighters. That would be your downfall because you didn't do a proper job in pre-production. And now to the second question about Benin antiquity. The interesting thing is that Benin antiquity, like I mentioned before, is an influence to me as a filmmaker. So when I'm talking about chiaroscuro and sfumato and Baroque movements and all those things, one thing that's common with all of them is the interplay of light and darkness and how characters intermingle with the composition. With everything I just described now, look at a standard Benin artifact. That's exactly what you see there. And like I mentioned before, when they are being even exhibited at the museums, the way they light them is also to simulate this mood. You understand? So that's for way back till this point in time. But from this point in time forward, with the new thing I'm working on that we're going to start promoting with the residency we're about to start, is taking elements and attributes from Benin, from the culture, for instance. I'm starting with Benin. Maybe I might go to Ife next or Nok or somewhere else, but with Benin, for instance, what are the things that are easily noticeable in Benin works? You have the symmetry, number one. There's a composition that is constant. There's a symmetry that is constant. So while I'm working on Benin, I'm also working on Egyptian art, because what I'm trying to do is to say, you know what, let's create new film styles. So it's not like, oh, film is film, yeah, the actor, cinematographer, but let's create new film styles so that when you're watching this, just like you're looking at a painting, like, oh, this is a realistic painting. Oh, this is hyper realism. Oh, this is cubism. Oh, this is impressionism, this expressionism. I believe it's high time we began to have art form, this abstract art, this stylized art, you know. So I believe it's high time. If film is truly an art form, which I believe it is, because if film wasn't an art form, I will not be making films, but I'm only making films as an extension of my art, like I mentioned before. So if film is truly an art form, that means each art form is heralded by styles. And as an artist, you are only as relevant as the style that you promote. Because if you are painting what everybody's painting, then you're just part of the number. So I believe that filmmakers should be encouraged to develop, adapt, and exhibit new styles of filmmaking, which will in turn will now begin to push to those who are shouting about how they want a lot of things inclusive. And then we can make a case and say, okay, these are representation from Nigeria, these are representation from Africa. It is still film, but told in a different style. How open are you to these styles? And then we can begin to have a broader communication about that. So for my past, it's been inspired by different European and movements and all of that, including Benin, because of the outlook. But going forward, even though I'm still going to make my regular movies, I'm going to be making a lot of very direct movies that are purely inspired by African art and African mythology too. Yeah. And those are meant to be like, they're meant to be movements, art movements in film. So it's like film art. Yeah, so that's where it's going to right now. And if you notice, I'm more in Benin these days, and those are the things I've been working on codedly. But now you guys have maybe say it publicly.
Okay, that was lovely. And I have here a word from Tunde. Well, another Tunde this time. This is Tunde Akinlolu, who says, "Fantastic work, bro. Always proud of you, any day, anytime. Misef, they watch you from far off." So you're also being watched. Fantastic. Thank you so much. Now, we have a few minutes left. Can you just tell us a little bit more about this residency? How can people apply? What is the process? Do you have dates? What should people know about this forthcoming residency?
Okay. So the residency is open to fine artists and filmmakers, because I believe there's an intersection between fine art and film. I'm a living witness to that. And one of my most admired artists is he was my teacher in Univen. His name is Ohikhuare El Drag. You guys should check his work out, you understand. So if you think my lighting is beautiful in film, go check out the paintings by Ohikhuare El Drag Leonard. You understand that, yeah. So he was my lecturer, of course, before I got into Uniben from Yabatek. So I was already practicing surrealism and all of that. So meeting him just made me, very inspired, because this is my direct lecturer now. Yabatek has an art style. Yabatek is not really open to surrealism. So when I finished from Yabatek, I really wanted to express myself as a surrealist. That's the only reason I agreed to go to Univen. So meeting him there gave me that chance to, So it's someone I'll be dragging into this as well. But the whole idea is that people register, whether you're a filmmaker or an artist, you must already have a body of work, you must have a style. So whether you're a filmmaker, you must have a style. As in, you must be someone that when people look at your work, oh, I'm sure this must have been done by this person. You understand? And personally, it's one thing I've tried to do with all the films I've made in my life, whether it's comedy, horror, or whatever. There is something that's unifying with every film I've made. First of all, there's the lighting design. The secondly, as a way I try to tell my stories with the camera, I decide when I want the viewers to be peepers in the scene. And yeah, most of my films, I do a lot of peeper scenes. What I mean by that is I shoot in such a way that it feels like you are in the scene watching what's going on. You understand what I'm trying to say? So again, I do that a lot. And when I decide to shoot a movie, I have my template of things that must be in the movie, which I don't need to even write down. They're all in my head. So if I make a comedy, the philosophy behind the treatment of the comedy will give it a touch of surrealism. So it's in the treatment that everything actually happens. So it doesn't matter the script I get. By the time I finish treating it, there will be a lot of surrealism in it. And of course, since we know surrealism is all about the world of dreams and fantasies and impossibilities and all that, and the cognitive imagination, we know that, yeah, it always comes in there, irrespective of the genre I'm shooting. So, yeah, so everybody who already has an identifiable style of work is welcome, but the goal is that when we bring you to Benin and spend a month, we've already secured the location. I've been working closely with the Edo State government from afar. I am not a staff of the Edo State government. I'm just an individual who wants to see progress, and I take it to them and they listen and they do so. Now, there's a very huge, massive soundstage in Benin. There's a film village in Benin. And the place where we are going to be using for the residency is a quarters, very beautiful quarters, 24 hours lights connected directly to the grid. There's no power interruption. And we can actually house over 100 filmmakers there at every point in time. They have rooms, they have well air-conditioned rooms with facilities and all that. So that's where the residency will be happening. And then it's very close to the Oba's Palace and the soundstage and every other thing, and Ikun Street where the broadcasters are. So the people will spend 1 month, have a taste of Benin, have a session in between where they share their own personalities and the intricacies of their work. And then they have feedback. And we're inviting students and enthusiasts and creatives in the state as well to come and engage them. But when they are done with all of this, they're not expected to sit down and come up with either a painting or a sculpture or a film or an animation that reflects the experiences they've had so far during their 1 month stay in Benin. And then, like I said before, we're going to propose a template of what we have coined, an art style, a film style that we have coined to resemble what happens in Benin. You understand what I'm trying to say? And there's an intersection between what's happening in Benin and the Egyptian art. Because you know, Egyptian art, there's always profile. You understand? So we have another style we're coming up with, just like profiles. Everything is in profile. So if you've appreciated the Egyptian art till now, why can't you appreciate scene profiles in movies too? So it's all about expanding the scope of the academic way we think about movies, because we have to jump from being just creative filmmakers to people who are contributing effectively to the conversations around film. Yeah. So in terms of registration, by the end of the month, by the end of this month, everything will be made public. Registration. While we've not announced it yet, we are hoping we can get a partner to take charge of what's going to be required for the people to be in Benin for 1 month. But if we don't get a partner, then we're going to announce it. And when you're coming, like every other residents in the world, you come with your money to spend on yourself.
Exactly. Thank you so much, Stanley. Our time is up, but I have a last question here from Tony Ada, who's asking. He says, thanks for your insight on the relationship between film and other arts. Do you worry about how the Nigerian audience might appreciate your films? For whom do you make your films?
Awesome. That's a very important question. And I'll answer it very fast. I do not make films for everybody. That's why I said at the beginning, I'm not necessarily the filmmaker who's making films because he wants to make money. So my venture into filmmaking was not money driven. It was for me to continue my art. I needed another space to continue painting since I was not going to be a commercial painter, painting on canvas. And so I'm treating my film as art, and everything about the way I approach my film is art. And has the audience been there from the beginning? Yes, I've always had an audience. There are always people who are attracted to certain unique things. They might not be in the majority, but starving them of the things that they love is an injustice. And so from when I made my first horror movie, Clients, until now, all the crazy surreal films I've made, the audience always increases over time. Because I know people who said they will never see a Quentin Tarantino movie, but when he made Django Unchained, they say, no, 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 no. At the end of the day, I know like 4 people who said they will never see a Quentin Tarantino who are seeing his movies now. So the audience will, it's just that you have to stay true to what you do and not shift. If you know this is your style, if you know this is what you believe in, keep doing it. But am I making the films for everybody? Like I said, no. And I'm not saying that because I'm trying to be proud or disrespectful, but it's just the fact. Because if I wanted to make films for everybody, I will make the slapstick comedies. I'll make the unnecessarily long films with jokes that are still, people make that. I'll make regular films, but I can't tell this. Like I've been operating in the entertainment industry now for 20 something years. I've never been able to get myself to make a regular film. If I make a regular film, will I make more money? Yes, because the market loves that. But is that what I'm coined? Is that what I'm fashioned to do? No. So I can't get myself to do it. So, but one tool I've had in my hand, one opportunity is with our festival, RTF. And so every year I'm able to interact and interface with young filmmakers who come sometimes and say, oh, I like your film, I like what you do. And I take them up straight up under my wings and I begin to mentor them so that we can be more. Let's appreciate ourselves and increase the industry. But let me tell you this very quickly. There was a time we're trying to secure, like with the festival, we try and secure deals for young filmmakers and get their works distributed, not on the Amazons or the Netflix, but my philosophy is this: if I have my work on 20 platforms in a non-exclusive deal, if I have my works on 50 platforms, non-exclusive, all of them, I could make more money than exclusive on one platform. So that's my philosophy. So many times when we propose movies to a lot of platforms, they are always saying, oh, we like more of art house films. So and we're saying, oh, we have a problem with distribution here. So if there's an opportunity for us to put films in so many platforms outside, they're looking for art house films. That means what I'm doing is what a lot of people should be doing because the opportunities are there. They might not be the loud ones. So I have my films on a couple of platforms that a lot of people don't know, but they are there. They are in different countries. People are watching them because they love those art house films. And that's why we can take, that's the only reason we can take films to France to show. Because the films we take to France made by first-time filmmakers are strong art house films with very strong personalities and very strong styles and visuals. And so I'll say, I'm not changing. And the audience is not everybody. But for those who love the kind of films I make, I'm promising you, I will not change.
We do not want you to change, Stanlee. Thank you so much. This has been lovely. Thank you so very much. Along with Esther, I will say, she says, very insightful. Thank you, sir. So let me echo that. Thank you. This has been truly enlightening. Stanlee, thank you for being with us. And thanks to our audience also for being with us. Like Stanlee and I have mentioned, there will be the announcement subsequently about a date for when he will give us a practical session on this formula that he has, and I hope you will all be there, or at least some of you. It will be very interesting. Like you can see from what he has said, it's truly fascinating. There's a lot we can learn from him. Thank you so much, Stanlee. We have, well, let me speak for myself. I have enjoyed this conversation. I've learned so much. Very enlightening indeed. Thank you. Now, this conversation will be on our YouTube channel subsequently. So if anybody wants to take a second look, well, you'll find it there. I think a lot of what Stanlee has said deserves greater thought. So you'll find it. Thank you once again, Stanlee, and thank you all for being there. And I wish you a very great day. All the best. Bye now.